Ladies and gents, this is probably going to be take 3 of this particular one, just so you know. My phone and my camera are messing up on me, so bear with me if this video gets a little bit long. I'm going to try and go over everything that I covered in the last 2 takes, and we're going to try and do it as quickly as possible because I don't know how long I got. Anywho, the CDC reports that the Wuhan Chinese virus is reached pandemic levels and is maturing into a global pandemic. According to previous knowledge on the subject, this is my own previous knowledge, mind you, coronavirus is the common cold. However, this is not the same common cold that we're used to, so it'd probably be more prudent to do a little bit of extra research on the subject. However, the best treatments thus far, the most effective treatments, have been utilizing eucalyptol vapors and utilizing boiled water evaporation of eucalyptols and camphors, and respirating that to clear the lungs. Also utilizing gravity assisted coughing. If you don't know what that is, there are several healthcare pages, web pages that are dedicated to the methods for evacuating your lungs from offending materials. The Heimlich maneuver is not something that you should use, nor should you have anyone utilize on you in this situation, because it can cause more harm than good. Okay, so don't utilize a Heimlich maneuver. It's if the person finds it impossible to breathe, they need to kneel down on the edge of, say, like a bed or a sofa, place their head beneath the level of their knees need to be up to their chest, and then they have to forcefully cough downwards in a downward orientation, utilizing gravity to assist the mucus out of the lungs. It's difficult at first, and it can take a long time to evacuate the entirety of the crap that is going to build up in your lungs from the viral infection. And you see me sitting here touching my face. This is really bad, according to the CDC. Now, according to my method, the Price method on fighting diseases, it's kind of counterintuitive to the CDC method. You know, instead of not getting myself sick, I strive to get sick with whatever viruses are around at that time, so that I can then immunize myself for future dates against that self-same virus. Most of the time, I don't even realize that I have type A influenza or the common cold. It just kind of brushes off. Last time that I really realized I had a massive problem, I actually had diphtheria. So, it's you need to pay attention to your own personal symptoms and whatnot, and you do need to treat the symptoms, but at the same time, the overall treatment of the virus relies entirely upon your immune system, and your immune system has to be built up to fight it. So there are a lot of things that you can do to build your immune system. Of course, taking on vitamin C. Vitamin C palmitate's a good supplement to utilize for that, although citric fruits and citrus juices are an excellent wet method for that. Another wet method for that is apple juice and cranberry juices. They hold the most vitamin C per fluid ounce of any liquid, any wet supplement out there. So wet supplements are probably going to be more absorbable for your body, and that's going to be able to help you quite a bit. Of course, everybody knows the chicken soup and Sprite method, although I'm not sure if that's going to work with this, because chicken noodle soup, or chicken soup for that matter, tends to aid in mucosal production. In other words, it helps the pneumonic bacterium, which is the main cause of the pneumonia after the fact of having the virus. So you might want to take it easy on the chicken noodle soup, folks. Just saying. Second on the docket, recently we've had some untoward police activity in the several states, not limited to, but including the state of California, the state of Virginia, the state of New York, the state of New Hampshire, the state of Rhode Island, the state of Washington, D.C., and the state of Washington proper. And before you say it, yes, Washington, D.C. is actually its own state. I don't know if you realize that. They say it's the District of Columbia. No, it's the capital state of the many states. Okay, so it's its own, basically, state, its own country within the larger country. Okay, the threat and utilization of force in order to remove constitutional rights from peaceful, constitutionally appropriate American citizens is ramping up. It's happening more and more often. You have a more and more opportunity to come to physical harm and fiscal harm. Yes, that's both bodily harm and monetary harm from these police officers. If you don't end up with bodily harm, you end up with fiscal harm, which is illegal under United States Code Title 18, Section 241-242. Conspiracy to remove or deprivate rights of a citizen, constitutional rights of a citizen under the color of law. Now, that is without the indication of a crime, the indication of the commission of a crime. If a person is simply carrying a firearm, carrying an air gun, carrying a bow, carrying a fucking sword, carrying a knife, carrying a bazooka, it doesn't fucking matter what the weapon is. They could be driving their car. It's all covered, legally speaking, under the Constitution of the United States and the Second Amendment thereof and the Fourth Amendment thereof. If you have to utilize force in order to protect your own life, that is covered under the Fourth Amendment. If you have to resist your government through peaceful protest, that is covered under the First Amendment. If you have to resist a tyrannical government through the utilization of force en masse, that is covered under the Second Amendment. And anyone who tells you otherwise does not know their history. Nor are they a Minuteman. And you could take that to the bank. So, furthermore, American Minutemen are trained to operate in instances where we may work alongside of or in opposition to police officials. Pardon me. I got the hic burps. It's a hiccup and a burp at the same time, anyways. sometimes we have to work both with and against, sometimes we have to work with officials of law enforcement, and sometimes we have to work against them, depending on the situation. Should the situation be protection of constitutional rights, then we are obviously in an action against the police, and we normally try to do things peaceably. That's always been the instance. We try to be peaceful. We try to do things through the peaceful processes, the constitutional peaceful processes, before going to the constitutional violent processes. That is the main goal of every American Minuteman. There has never been an American Minuteman who has just out and out said, well, shit, let's just go be terrorists for a day. It has never happened and never will. The so-called terrorist actions, taken by the Sons of Liberty in the colonial times they were not terrorist actions per se, specifically because it was a group of armed individuals who had the instance of armed insurrection to quell tyrannical oppression. Okay? That's not tyrannical. That's not terrorism. That is the opposition to terrorism. Because even a government can be guilty of terrorism in an instance. So, in case you're wondering, yes, we are not terrorists. No, we don't understand why you would call us that. And yes, we consider you our enemy if you consider yourself to be on a plane greater than we. We are all equal. As per the preamble of the Constitution of the United States of America, we, the people of the United States of America, in order to form a more perfect union, do so accept that this one great nation under God created, it was not one great nation under God, it was that all men are created equal in the eyes of God, and therefore are endowed with certain inalienable rights. Though not enumerated, chiefest of and utmost of these rights are the right of life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness. However, those who are in political power will always utilize that power to seek to cause the people to suffer. And being such that the people are predisposed to suffer, they shall suffer. But when a long train of usurpations should reduce them under absolute despotism, it is their right, nay their duty, to throw off such government and make for brighter future securities. As such, it is the responsibility here now delineated to the Congress of the many colonies to enumerate these rights and laws so as to define our future security of government. Here follows the many rights. And there you go. There's your preamble. The most important part of that is that all men are created equal. But when such actors should reduce them under absolute despotism, it is their right, nay their duty, which means it is your duty to stand up and do this. Okay? They were speaking with a bit of emotional flair, but at the same time trying to put it together with law. Okay, and it's very difficult to do them both at the same time, which is why emotions and law don't necessarily coincide. But in this instance, it does. So when they said it is their right, it is their duty, they meant that it's not just your right, it is also your responsibility as an American citizen to stand up, to stand for our Constitution. These police officers, when they act in a manner against their oath to the American Constitution, are no longer American citizens. In that instance, they become enemy combatants of the American public. And they knowingly do so. I want you to understand that. They knowingly do so. They realize that they are now violating the Constitution of the United States and their oath of office, which makes of them a criminal act, and they are only able to get away with it if they're able to get away with it. Okay? You are that defining factor. Okay, 16 minutes. Let's see if we can make this a short video and try and get things done right. Okay? Next on the docket, list, what have you. State of California, Governor Gavin Newsom has made it illegal to own and utilize copper-bound projectiles of any kind for anything. Before Governor Nuisance before Governor Nuisance went and made those laws, this was the only way that you could legally hunt in the state of California. Can we say violate the Second Amendment much? And BLM section 001 point A through D, I believe it is. The right to procure sustenance through the action of hunting shall not be a permittable, or shall not be an action necessitating permission from any government entity, as it is a standard human right. I don't know where that particular projectile went. I'm going to have to hunt it down later when I'm not doing this. But it's imperative that you understand this, because these projectiles are legally the only way that a person can hunt in the state of California. If you own any one of these projectiles, this is bismuth, by the way, that's why it's gray, and this one's copper, that's why it's kind of goldenrod. Non-lead projectiles in the state of California are illegal to utilize for any method, for any manner. Which means that now hunting is illegal in the state of California, which is a violation of the Constitution of the United States of America. Per the Federalist Papers, I believe it's Federalist 11, or I think it's 11. I'm pretty sure it's 11. Hunting shall be the commonplace of the the Department of Bureau of Land Management, and be delineated therefore through the Bureau of Land Management. Bureau of Land Management, Code of Conduct, Laws and Ordinance, Section 001, Parts A through D. Okay? So you understand, it is constitutional law. It's just delineated a fucking lot. You have the right to sustain yourself through hunting. So in the state of California, Governor Newsom, or Nuisance, or whatever you want to call him, is Guilty of treason. Guilty of the action of treason by the fact that his signature is on that document. Okay? Now, Schwarzenegger, he gave us an out. He said, you may utilize any projectile that does not have a majority lead. Okay? Which, these are not majority lead, they are majority copper. I bought them specifically so that I may utilize them for hunting. Game animals, not human beings. These were originated as a military type round back in 1906, 1904. Point in time, these were originated as a military round for penetrating through armor. The cavity on the solid copper round with a cavity within was supposed to make it so that the copper would be able to invert through the impact site and be able to shoot itself through any type of metal, creating a hot jet of metal which could then penetrate through whatever clothing items you had on, and stop that person from being able to advance across the battlefield. They found out that they were far more devastating than at first thought, and that when the person that they were firing at with these rounds was not holding or utilizing a shield, a metal shield with the rifle over the top thing. You can find this out about World War I. They did exist. When they weren't holding their NML shields and crossing no man's land, the rounds would be so potent that they would literally eviscerate the soldiers on impact, and so they were considered to be unbecoming of military combat restrictions. Now, mind you, I don't agree, but my opinions are my opinions. Law is law, so there you go. That's really fucked up, dude. I spent all this money on these. I can't legally use them. I spent all this money on lead. Can't legally use it. I spent all this fucking money, and this psychopath is going to try and make it illegal for me to walk around with my dick in my shorts. I mean, literally. That's what this is coming to. This guy's making freaking projectile vomit a considered a felonious offense. I'm sorry, dude, but that's called a natural reflex. It happens whether or not I want it to happen, okay? It happens whether or not, a law-abiding citizen wants it to happen. So, for going against natural law, Gavinator nuisance. See that, sumbitch? Sit and spin on top of it. You might get a little bit of a rise out of it. Ugh, I can't stand people who fuck with my country. It's one of the reasons I became a freaking Minuteman. Anyways, so, a little bit of a shout out there to the fine men and women who I serve with. Y'all know who you are. I need not name you out. You have worked with me with the utmost courage And I respect you for that. And I love you for that. We all stand on this line together. I hope y'all know it. Alright. Last thing on the docket that I wanted to go over with you, something I didn't cover earlier because I was worried that I couldn't get it in there. So, there was an officer involved infraction, which is where the 242 came from, the conspiracy to deprivate an American citizen of constitutional rights where no crime has been committed. The officer in question did not follow protocol at all. And I'm about to run you through that. So, first and foremost, unloaded, as you can see. Okay? This air gun is unloaded. It cannot fire. If you know anything about this air gun, okay, that particular piece is forward. It cannot discharge any air. Okay? And just for good measure, I'm going to drop this undersized projectile down the barrel, showing you that there is nothing obstructing the barrel. Keep an eye on this port right here, because this will come jumping out. Well, it normally jumps out. Okay. See? I pulled the projectile out. Now, I am going to demonstrate with my rifle, even though this man was holding a pistol in the video evidence. With my rifle, I am going to demonstrate the 3 rules of firearm safety during an engagement that he broke. 1, muzzle discipline. That is when you point this part of the rifle in any given direction, that is your discipline. His muzzle discipline, and I'm going to use my pistol for this. As you can see, at this point, it is safe. It is not capable of firing. Okay? Having his finger upon the trigger. Pointing his firearm with intent. Not pointing muzzle towards the ground with a readiness, but finger on trigger, gun up with intent. Now, before you ask, there's nobody behind this. I'll show you, okay? Nobody back there. There's nobody to be harmed by this air gun, okay? It's simply a prop in this position. Now, he did not utilize proper situational muzzle discipline, which is this. He did not utilize trigger discipline, which is this. Keeping your finger off of the trigger until it is necessary, at which point in time you can put your finger on the trigger. But until such time, you need to keep your finger out here, outside of the guard. See that thing right there? That's the trigger guard. That's so that you don't accidentally catch on the trigger. Well, your finger still catches on the trigger. That's what it's made for. You need to keep this thing, keep your booger flickers off the Peter Digger. Okay? Now, he did not point his firearm downwards. Instead, he kept it trained center mass with it far too close to his face and finger on the trigger. If I ever catch you doing that as a U.S. Minuteman, I will personally beat the fuck out of you. Firearms discipline, motherfucker. You want to give us shit about not being responsible enough to have a firearm, you better goddamn well fucking toe the line. I am dead serious on this. If you cannot do what I am doing now, keeping a calm and level head, being able to utilize this firearm with appropriate safety factors involved, and understand something before you go saying, oh, but you're placing yourself at a disadvantage. Am I? No, I'm not. I'm actually not placing myself at a disadvantage. I'm placing myself at an advantage because my firearm or air gun is drawn, and yet I'm not going to shoot and cause harm to somebody unless I absolutely need to. And that is all that that is. Drop of the elbow. Drop of the elbow, bring your finger into the guard. All right? And you should already know where that projectile is going to go. You shouldn't even have to aim. You should just point and shoot. That's all it needs to be. Okay? So, let's go over that again. Really quick. Hand, giving support. Finger out of the guard. Muzzle towards the ground. Elbow in the air. Because what is that elbow going to do? It's going to give you weight and leverage to bring up that firearm. Now, if this gentleman could not get it through his fucking thick skull that you cannot hold a firearm with your fucking booger flicker on the daggum trigger, I'm going to put it to you like this. This gentleman was doing this. The whole video long, he's sitting there shaking his fucking guts out. Not the fella that was taking the video. He's cool as a cucumber. You know, just plight of a pickle. Don't give a fuck. Police officer had his finger on a fucking trigger and was shaking. Did that sound a little bit like I could have pulled the trigger right there? Yeah, that's because I was. A simple shake can discharge a firearm. If you are so heightened with adrenaline that you can't focus, this should not be in your hands, let alone like this. Firearm should be drawn appropriately. For once, I can definitely tell that this police officer has absolutely no understanding of how to utilize a firearm effectively. Guy's probably had about as much training as a fucking shoe. One that ain't been used yet. Anyways. So we've been over that particular crapshoot. By the way, gentleman in the video, it happened in Orange County. The officer was a sergeant with the Orange County Sheriff's Department. I do not have the full information. However, you can research this at your own leisure. Brian at High Impact Flicks happens to have the full lowdown on this, so please go over and check out his